Ottawa epidemiologist Raywat Deonandan. And Raywat, let's start with that good news. Fewer hospitalizations. What does that tell you?
What it probably means to me is that we're seeing the results of previous outbreaks linked to certain events. For example, outbreaks in long-term care centers are more likely to result in hospitalizations and deaths and ICU bed usage. So as those outbreaks make their way through the system, we see a diminishment of those individuals in hospitals. And now what we see is the increase in cases being due to outbreaks in other environments that are probably slightly less likely to be hospitalized. It's a little confusing, I know, but this disease doesn't spread out homogeneously across the population. It explodes in super-spreading bursts, and the nature of those bursts affects how the hospitalization usage occurs.
Obviously, it's great to see the hospitalizations go down, but having said that, we've also lost 96 lives since the beginning of the month. And having said that, our test positivity rate remains at around 13 or 14%.
Exactly. So even though the hospitalization rate has come down, the penetration of the disease continues to go up. While it's true that a certain percentage of cases will end up being hospitalized, it's not true that every single person has that same risk. So that's why it matters where the outbreak occurred. As I mentioned, long-term care centers are more likely to result in hospitalizations and deaths. Outbreaks in schools are less likely because children are, less likely to become seriously ill. So it matters that transmission is occurring, mostly because increased transmission means a higher probability that these high vulnerability groups, like long-term care residents, will get it and therefore will become hospitalized.
We've been above that test positivity rate of 10% for weeks and weeks. What does it mean when that number remains so high for such a long time?
It means one of two things, both of which can be true. One is you're not testing enough. I don't think that's really the case. You're testing sufficiently. And the second is you got a lot of cases and they're well distributed within the community. I think that's more likely the case. So you've got a raging epidemic with a deep community penetration, and it's going to take a while for those cases to resolve. In the meantime, we have to prevent new cases from occurring.
Finally, Raywat, we've seen so much data come out of this pandemic. I mean, even when you look at the news releases sent by the government every day, there's tons and tons of numbers and statistics and information. Do we, at the end of all this, and you as someone who looks at the numbers, do we need to do a lot better kind of, standardizing data and making sure that there's uniform ways of tracking all this stuff? Because you might go to Manitoba's site and see a different way of announcing this compared to Alberta or Quebec.
Yeah, it depends on who the audience is, right? So these websites and data reports, they're for a variety of audiences, for scientists, for politicians, for the average citizen. So it's important to have a variety of communication tools on the table. And I think we need one particular kind of website that's just for the average citizen who only cares about things like, is it serious? Is it serious in this province versus that province? And the other details that we scientists can deal with. So this disease has shown us that we lack really good communication skills when it comes to public health emergencies, and we have to work on that.
That's University of Ottawa epidemiologist and frequent contributor to 680 CJOB, Raywat Deonandan.